Dorchester County Councilman Jay Byars is considering a run for the United States Congress to represent South Carolina's 1st Congressional District. He says the district needs a leader with strong conservative values. I talk one-on-one with Jay for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jay Byars.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah.
Needless to say, you're a husband, a father, and of course, a Dorchester County Councilman.
Yes, sir.
But now, you are, according to WCBD, considering a run for the United States Congress. Let me go back to April 10th. It reads this from WCBD. Republican Dorchester County Councilman Jay Byars is considering a run for South Carolina's 1st Congressional District. In fact, you announced your intention in April on X, writing the country is at, quote, a crucial inflection point, and that the district needs a leader with strong conservative values.
Okay.
What got you from being a councilman to now a potential candidate for Congress?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's this is my 4th term on County Council of Dorchester County. We've done some amazing things. We've got a great team. We've worked together to build our first ever county park system, brand new libraries, transportation and green space penny that we've passed to be able to make Dorchester County a great place to live. I love the work we've done. I'm a bridge builder, and I watch what's going on in DC, and I see too many of our politicians are more adept at burning bridges. And I'm looking to go up there to get to work. We've got some serious needs in District 1, in Somerville and Charleston, all throughout the district. And we need to be able to go to DC and be able to represent the district and not represent ourselves. And so if I decide to make this jump, it's because I'm going up there to work. I'm not looking to climb a ladder. I'm not looking to be popular. I'm looking to go up there and get some things done, because after 15 years of the local level, seeing how things work and how broken things are, I think I can help move that needle.
What issues, because of the bridge burning in DC, have slowed down certain issues and certain topics here in the Lowcountry?
You know, roads cost a lot more money than they should, because the regulatory environment is just, it drags things out for years and years when we need to be able to move things quicker. We need federal funding for major infrastructure projects. And in order to be able to make things like that happen, you've got to have relationships, and you got to be able to reach across the aisle. You got to be able to talk to people and work with people to be able to make your community better. And when you're burning bridges, you don't have those relationships. I believe I bring that to the table for the district.
For the district. So where exactly in the 1st Congressional District do you need money for infrastructure projects now?
Well, I mean, one thing that's going to be very expensive for the state and for this community to absorb is when we take 526 and we expand the bridges going to Mount Pleasant.
Sure.
That is not a cheap endeavor. No road around here is a cheap endeavor, because we got bad soils, we got a lot of wetlands. And so we've got to get federal money, state money, and local money to be able to build the infrastructure we need. And so that is a big part of it. But conservation is also a big part. What makes us special is what the Lowcountry is. The Ace Basin, the Francis Marion National Forest, our beaches, protecting those things and making sure that we've got funds that actually protect those as well as the infrastructure we need.
So you have the infrastructure, or you need the infrastructure. What type of study would be ideal for this particular project as far as expanding 526?
Well, there's going to be several different studies, environmental studies, as well as the traffic impact studies that will be required. And those things are just going to be required by any road. No matter what road you build, those studies are going to be required. So you're going to have some of those studies that are going to be in place. And then once they're in place, you got to have the funding ready to go to be able to build those things. And so we've got a growing population here. The word is out. South Carolina is a great place to live. It's a great place to be, Charleston in particular. I'm from the upstate, Greenville, Spartanburg. You know, they're experiencing the same things. And so we've got to be able to have a representative in DC that looks out for the district. We're not out there worried about trying to get social media clicks. We're out there worried about how can I make the life better for my people in District 1 in Charleston, to take care of that. And that's part of what I want to do.
So let me ask you the obvious question.
Sure.
What is the current quality of life in the 1st Congressional District?
You know, it's really good. I think we've got a lot of things that are great. I think, thankfully, we have growth. Growth brings challenges with it, and there's no doubt about that, but it also brings opportunities. And our biggest challenge with the growth right now specifically is just traffic, infrastructure and traffic. We're already behind on that. If you look at South Carolina, it doesn't take anybody that drives from South Carolina to North Carolina or to Georgia, you can immediately tell that you left the state line just because, or you cross the state line because the roads are immediately better, immediately. And that's because their general assemblies for 40 years, when we weren't building roads, their general assemblies were doing those things. We got a lot of catching up to do. The General Assembly of South Carolina recently passed the fuel tax that's going to help catch up, but we are 40 years behind. And so when you look at from that standpoint of we've got to be able to go and be able to bring monies in to be able to get us caught up, that's going to be a big part of it. So, the quality of life here is great. The weather's great. The people are phenomenal. I would argue that the best people in the world live in District 1. But I know that our challenges with infrastructure is going to be the biggest thing because there's a lot of people that want to move here.
So let me go back it up then. How do you actually grow with smart growth in the 1st Congressional District?
I think a lot of that's just going to be putting growth in the right places. I mean, we deal with that in Dorchester County, just trying to get ahead of things where we can. We are better than we were when I got on council with our policies with growth. We still have work to do. Everybody does, because at the end of the day, there are people that want to pass moratoriums. That sounds great, but my girls are in college. If they want to come back and be able to buy a home and live here, they got to be able to afford to do so. And if we just stop building, then the price of everything goes up. And if you're already in a home, great. If you're not and you're trying to start a family, that makes it very difficult for people to afford. So we've got to find a way to balance that. So putting growth in the right places, high density growth within the municipalities like a Somerville if they want more high density, and then less high density out in the counties, I think would be really good. We've put some policies in place that when developments come in Dorchester County, there's a conservation piece of that. So if they want some density, that's great, but you're going to do some conservation as well. So we are very focused on trying to protect green space, but we're also focused on trying to make sure that people can afford to live.
Let me just jump right into that. Afford to live. So what is the typical price for a house in the 1st Congressional District?
Goodness. It varies all over the district. So Somerville, an average house might be $400,000. You go to James Island, that same exact house is $800,000. So, and the incomes in the Charleston area just really, the median incomes have not kept up with the exponential growth of price in housing. I run a mortgage business for my day job, and I see it every day. That, at the end of the day, our incomes as a median income are in one trajectory, but the price points are a much higher trajectory. We got a lot of people that are moving here, they're working remotely, and maybe they're working remotely in Manhattan, and they don't have to go to work, but they're still making $700,000 a year instead of $70,000. That puts a lot of pressure on prices for the local wage earners.
Where do you see those price points for the 1st Congressional District in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a big question. I think if interest rates drop down, we'll see they're going to continue to rise. But I do think based on what happens with immigration, I think there are a lot of people who are taking up residences, whether it's rental properties or what have you now, that if they go home, if we have 10 or 15 million people leave the country, they're living somewhere right now. That's going to open up a lot of housing for other people. And so we may see some downward pressure on rental rates, which would be great for Americans. That would be great to be able to get those prices back in line with incomes, because there's not so much demand on housing pressure. So we'll see how that shakes out. That's going to be kind of a national level thing that may drive things down. As it comes to people just wanting to move here, there's going to continue to be pressure on pricing. So I'd love to see us be able to get those pricing pressures down.
I want to get back to that in just a second, but what is actually popular in your district right now? Is it rental? Is it home ownership, or is it actually Airbnbs?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think your young families still want to be able to own a house. People want to be able to just start their American dream, a family getting married, starting to have kids. But then there's people that don't want the maintenance. They want to be able to travel. They don't want to have kids. And so maybe they're more interested in renting. It just really depends on everybody's situation. I'm going to be interested to see things I'm reading. The Airbnb market may be tapped out. That may start coming back. And if some of those houses start going back on the market for people to buy to live in, I think that's going to open things up as well. I think that market probably has been saturated.
It has been saturated. So where has the fluctuation been over year to year?
Sure.
With Airbnbs and all that.
I think we see it in Dorchester County where we've seen some Airbnbs come across, and certainly we get some revenue out of that from an accommodations tax. But I'm not really that interested in a lot of Airbnbs in Dorchester County because we're a place that people want to live. we want you to come down here. We want you to visit us. We want you to spend money. But at the end of the day, Airbnb is more appropriate in a place like a Folly Beach, or although they have limited theirs recently. But I mean, just from a vacation standpoint, we provide a lot of the workforce housing in Dorchester County for the Charleston area, and so I want our people to be able to have a good quality of life. One of the reasons that I've been out front pushing for building new parks, building new libraries, green space in the county is I love Charleston County parks, but I don't want to drive to Mount Pleasant to do nice things. And so we've built those things at home, and now we've got those things 5-10 minutes from everybody's house. Yeah. So we're going to continue to do those things just to try to make sure that we're keeping quality of life in Dorchester. And the Airbnb, I think that's going to take care of itself. I think, as people travel less, or maybe they start looking at different things, I think the market will solve that issue.
Okay.
There's a place for it. There's a place for it without a doubt. But at the end of the day, I think that some of that's going to weed itself out.
Sure. What do you actually need right now? Do you need affordable housing? Do you need attainable housing? Or do you actually need workforce housing?
That's a great question. I look at it from the standpoint of, we just need people to be able to buy a house that they can afford to live in. I'm not a huge fan of government subsidies for affordable housing because I think the market takes care of that on its own if you allow it to. I am a fan of trying to incentivize affordable workforce housing. So if we've got a commercial developer coming in, they're going to build some industrial, and they want to build a small piece of affordable housing there to where they limit the folks that can buy or rent in there based on their AMI, then I think that really gives folks a chance to get started. You get into people buying a house with subsidies, and then they are limited by how much appreciation they can have. Well, now you're limiting their ability to grow their wealth to be able to go to the next house. And so that I think that gets a lot more complicated. But we do need to incentivize doing some affordable or workforce housing, but also realize, we can incentivize that with property taxes if we give a reduced property tax rate. However, we still have to pay for sheriff's deputies. We still have to pay for EMS and fire and roads and schools. And those people use those resources. So we can't just give that away, because at the end of the day, that just means everybody else pays more in taxes. And so we've got to be real careful about balancing that.
So, well, let me ask you this. What's the ideal reduced tax rate in your mind?
Every Republican would love to say zero. That's not reality. We need to be able to just take just enough, which in Dorchester County, I think we do a great job of, to keep our quality of life, keep public safety number one. That's our biggest expense. About 58% of our overall general fund budget is public safety, and make sure that those people are paid. So that number depends on everybody's ability to pay, and that also depends on the value of their house. And so we need to be able to make sure that value is such that everybody can be able to do that. And I think we've done a good job with that there. There's a whole lot that plays into that from a commercial standpoint. Like, we don't have a very good commercial tax base in Dorchester County just because geographically we're limited. 26 goes on the wrong side of the county line for us. We don't have a big river like the Cooper River, the Ashley River. You're not building a port over there in Dorchester County. So we're limited with certain things, and we're trying to fix some of that. But at the end of the day, that just takes a long time. So in the meantime, just keeping people's property taxes as low as possible, but also making sure that they got the services that they expect. If they call 911, that the sheriff shows up, that the EMS shows up, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that.
With those limitations, Councilman, what actually can you do right now for the 1st Congressional District?
What can I do right now? I think the biggest thing that I would like to do, if we decide to make this jump and make this run, is just take the same mindset I've always had. Like, I believe in public education. I believe in public safety. I believe that government exists for certain functions, but it needs to be a limited government. So we need to build roads. Well, private citizens aren't building roads. We need to be able to provide EMS, fire, and sheriff's department, but also conservation, the transportation money, the transportation penny we passed. We got the first real dedicated conservation funding that's recurring in Dorchester County. And so now we've got $35 million to do conservation with. God's not making any more land. And so we want to try to buy and protect and make sure that we keep our community what we want it to be, and it's not just sprawl and developments everywhere. So taking that same mindset to DC of, okay, can we reduce the regulatory environment that causes delays and millions and hundreds of millions for an infrastructure project and increases? Can we reduce that to be something reasonable? Can we also just make sure that we are bringing, if we're sending federal money up for infrastructure and gas, do we get that back here? Don't let it go to California or New York or Alaska or wherever else. Bring money back here for major projects, whether it's port deepening, whether it's major road projects. We've got to be able to make sure we take care of the first congressional district, because we're all paying into that pot. There's a lot that does not come back to the first district. And I think that if you build the right bridges and you have the right relationships, which is something that I focus on doing, I think I can help us there.
So how much money is the first congressional district as a whole sending to DC?
Oh, I have no idea. I could not tell you that right off the rip.
And well, let me ask you this. I know this might be a difficult question too, Councilman, but how much money do you actually need to fix these roads and create more infrastructure?
That's also an infinite number. I mean, with growth, you're going to continue to have infrastructure projects that are needed. That's just part of it. And so every single county in the Tri-County area, Berkeley, Dorchester, and Charleston, all have a transportation penny that we use to be able to fund our roads. However, every single one of those entities will also tell you that does not address all of the needs. So we need state money. We send money to Columbia all the time. We need state money to come back here. And, some of it goes to Greenville, some of it goes to Columbia or Myrtle Beach, and I understand that, but there's going to be major projects that we're going to need state money for. And then there's federal matching monies that we need to be able to get back to us. And I think some of the federal money that comes back to us with a lot of strings and red tape attached. If we could reduce those strings and red tape, just talking with engineers over the years, it would really expedite our time frame, which saves us money. And so I think that's the big thing, is just trying to get some of that red tape pulled off of any federal monies that are coming back so that we can actually build roads in a timely fashion.
And what exactly is that red tape right now that you need to peel off?
Yeah. So, you getting into traffic engineer questions, right? So you get into the weeds of that stuff that I don't typically get into. But there's times where there's an additional environmental assessment that may be required that we don't necessarily have to have as a state level or a local level, that maybe takes another 12 months to get done. Well, that 12 months, when you're building a $20 million road, now maybe it becomes a $24 million road. And that starts to add up over time. And a $24 million road these days will probably be a deal. Roads are in the hundreds of millions at this point.
At this point, Councilman, what else does the first congressional district need right now?
I think the biggest thing is we need to be able to make sure that we are, I like what we're doing currently in the administration. I think that President Trump's doing some amazing things. He does things very differently than I would do. I'm much more of a speak softly and carry a big stick. I think he just speaks loudly and carries a big stick too. But at the end of the day, I think what we need to do is try to make sure that we're taking care of Americans first, that we are building the infrastructure and the business community that we need to be able to provide American jobs. I look back when I was in graduate school and we allowed China into the WTO. That was a mistake then. I said it then. We are being taken advantage of by countries that are not our friends. And they want to undermine us globally. And we are the best thing going. America is the best thing going from a standpoint of freedom, opportunity. We're not perfect, but we need to be able to make sure that we're taking care of our folks. And we take care of our folks, and we're making things here again. I think this administration is focused on that, trying to bring manufacturing back to where we're making things here again, and taking care of our folks. And then just from a national security standpoint, we've got to find out, we got a lot of people here, we don't know who they are. I'm of the opinions look, everybody's got to go back home. However, we do need to find a humane and compassionate way for people to apply to come, work here, and earn their way to being an American citizen. And I think that would really open up doors to getting the right people here. So just trying to work together, work as a team. That's one of the things that we've had to do in Dorchester County. You got any elected official in a community, you got different opinions, but you got to be able to work together. You got to be able to reach across the aisle and work on common sense things, and bring people together. We're too divided now. The vitriol in politics just really drives me crazy. But there's also times we've got to stand on truth. And there are going to be factions that want us to just say, this is the truth, or it's my truth. there is the truth, and then there's your opinion. And we've got to be able to differentiate on those things as well, and be able to do it in a respectful tone.
What is that common sense law when it comes to making sure that the right people who are supposed to be here in the country are actually here?
Yeah. I see where the administration's paying people $1,000 to self-deport, which would save the taxpayers a lot of money, which I think would be good, because then if they do that, they can apply to come back and go through the regular legal application process to try to come back and actually be a productive American citizen. And I'm for that. I know that we need certain workforce to be here, but we also need to be able to make sure that they're here for the right reasons. I'm not convinced that there's people, in fact, I am convinced there are people here, untold numbers, who are not here for good reasons.
How many of those people are actually in the 1st Congressional District?
Oh, okay. I went out and talked to people. There's 3 or 4. I'm kidding. No, I mean, I have no idea. Hopefully none, but we really don't have a clue on that.
Well, let me ask you about the workforce. What type of workforce is ideal right now for the 1st Congressional District?
Being a former high school teacher and a science teacher, I get passionate about kids doing STEM and getting out and doing engineering, science, technology. I used to teach chemistry and physics at Somerville, and I love to see that light bulb turn on for kids. We got to start making things again. A country that makes things, especially things that are vital to our national security interests, and makes them here. Those things are very important for our long-term survivability. I mean, when you get down to it, we are a very young country, historically speaking. And that being said, we want to be around here another 250 years, and we want our kids to be able to grow up in a safe place. So the jobs that we want here, whether it's manufacturing, we've become a little too service oriented, and I'm in a service oriented business. But at the end of the day, if you were making things here, you're building wealth, because that money stays in the community and people go out and they're spending money at the local restaurant or coffee shop, and you're creating opportunity for everybody. So I think this administration is very focused on bringing things back here. That's also going to take a difference in a mind shift, I think. So you got some folks that they're more interested in doing something else that does not necessarily require that. We got to teach people it's okay to be in the trades. It's okay to make things. It's okay to fix things. A college degree may or may not be your best path forward. And for a lot of people, it's not. You could do a whole lot better without that college debt, and a whole lot better without spending 4 years in college, and you're out of high school making money and starting off at 60, and the next thing you know, you're making $120,000, and you've got a good life for your family.
Yeah. How many more jobs, because of all of this growth, Councilman, how many more jobs do you actually need for the next 5 to 10 years in your district?
Okay, so one of the things that we're looking at from Dorchester County is, personally, I'm not really that interested in creating a facility that brings 1,500 new jobs to town, because we already have serious stress levels on roads and schools. So like the Google that came to Dorchester County recently, for instance. So the nice thing that I saw about Google was they were bringing $8 million to the school district. That's really big money for Dorchester School District 2. 30 jobs, and those 30 jobs are high-paying jobs, but instead of 1,000 jobs and $8 million, and that now we've got 1,000 people putting kids in schools or putting people on roads, it's much less. Now that being said, there's challenges with Google, but we're looking at trying to create economic development opportunity for our folks. We're not necessarily looking to try to create more opportunity for people to move here, because we already have the challenges of infrastructure. So we're now working on balancing that. Small businesses are just as important as the big boys. I mean, and they employ a whole lot more people. When you get down to it, you just don't get the press. But a small business like mine, I've got 2 or 3 businesses, we employ 15, 20 people. We don't get a bunch of positive press, but that small business makes a difference in the community, and you take thousands of small businesses, add that up, it makes a big difference. So I'm much more interested in being business friendly, so that you got a dream to open up your own business, you can do that, and you can afford to make it work and see if it works out.
So what exactly is the state of economic development in the 1st Congressional District?
Every county's different, so you got 1st Congressional District, you got Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester, Colleton, and then Beaufort and Jasper.
Sure.
So Jasper's needs are very different from what ours are, and then Colleton County, their needs are very different from what ours are, Charleston counties. So every single district's going to be slightly different on what they need locally. That's the other thing about the federal government, is trying to do less at the federal level and empower the local governments to make decisions that are best for their local communities. I think we've lost some of that. And so I believe that government works best at the closest level to the people. What we've done on Dorchester County Council and the relationships we've got with Berkeley County and Charleston County and Colleton County that are right next door to us, we've been able to do some great things. And so trying to take less power out of Washington, D.C. and push that back down to the states and really back down to the local governments who are here talking with their community every single day, I think that's important as well.
What exactly are the communities and concerns right now when it comes to the 1st Congressional District?
I think the biggest concern that you'll hear from most people here is just traffic, infrastructure. That's what I hear all the time. You know, we roads, traffic's terrible, infrastructure's terrible. I don't disagree with it. I got to ride into it myself. And then just the quality of life from a price standpoint. It's expensive to live in Charleston. It's expensive to live in the 1st Congressional District, and just trying to get those wages up and get prices to where they normalize and they're not just growing so fast that people can't afford to stay here, you know, and that's a concern. And so, you know, when you pass moratoriums and do things, I mean, I get that you're trying to keep the growth out, but then you're making it much more expensive for our young families to start off. And I try to balance that all the time and just think about, what about the young family? What about that young teacher when I was a teacher? How are they going to afford to get started, you know, in their life? Because at this point, you know, I'm 53. You know, I'm not just getting started, but I want to make sure that kid coming out of Clemson or moving here from Spartanburg like I did at 22 years old, they got a shot at being able to do those things. So, you know, just keeping things affordable and then working to continue, and it's going to always be a work in progress, just getting our traffic and infrastructure under control. Because like I told you earlier, we're 40 years behind because the state of South Carolina just did not adequately fund infrastructure for 4 decades. And now we're catching up.
So how much of that fuel tax is actually coming back to your district?
I don't know the number. I will tell you this.
Yes, sir.
The fuel tax is limited to the interstates and then what DOT calls rural safety projects. There's not a lot of rural safety projects that actually qualify in Dorchester County. So we got one project done, which was South Carolina 61 over near the plantations.
Sure.
That was done, and that was considered a rural safety project, and they're going to continue that up past Legend Oaks. And other than that, there's not a lot in Dorchester County. I don't know that there's a lot of rural safety projects going on in Charleston County. Maybe there is, but I mean, Charleston ain't exactly rural, right. You know? But, you know, so a lot of the money, the sales tax money or the gas tax money is being generated in places like Charleston or Greenville or Spartanburg. But a lot of that money is going to the interstates, which it definitely needs to be done. 26, 95, those things need to be done. I-85 is just about finished on the Gaffney side.
Oh, yeah.
Those are important projects, no doubt. But we're also doing a lot of safety projects in rural areas, which I agree those need to be done too, but we're really not bringing nearly enough of that fuel money back to our counties that are actually producing the money. And so that is something I think is a flaw in the funding.
What else? What other flaws do you see in that funding right now, Councilman?
That's the biggest one. I mean, well, that one. And my understanding is one of the mistakes that the General Assembly made in the 80s was they did not put an inflation index on the fuel fund back then, which allowed us to start getting behind because we didn't have enough funding to continue and take care of our roads. This new fuel tax that's put on the price of gasoline also did not put an inflation index on. So I feel like the legislature missed an opportunity there to be able to not have to repeat this again in 30 years. So we will see how that shakes out.
I know you got to go, but I just want to say Gaffney, the home of the peaches.
Yeah.
I had a peach this morning, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, man. Got that big water tower on I-85. You can see that thing a mile away. Yeah. I'm an upstate boy, so everybody knows the Gaffney Beach.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Well, hopefully I can continue this conversation with you,
Yeah.
whether you run for Congress or not in the future. But for now,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dorchester County Councilman Jay Byars, thank you for your time again here on Quintin's Close-Ups.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll be good.
Yes, sir.